Okay, so I'll be translating for Professor Chen Zhilong.
好了哈，关于这个 transitional justice 这个议题啊，今天的主题呢，我首先介绍我自己，我是陈志龙陈教授，那我在台湾大学法律系呢，我教这个所谓的各种法律都教啊，尤其教这个刑事法。
So today, Professor Chen Zhilong is going to discuss about the topic about transitional justice. And Professor Chen's background, he actually teaches in Taiwan National University in the law department, the legal department, and he actually specializes in like different kinds of laws. And he is like a pro in this field. Yeah.
我的主题呢是。 如果没有人性尊严，就是假的民主。台湾目前是民主国家。
So, he just today he is dignity with this value in country, and then this kind of fake other country which happens in Taiwan.
Fake democracy. OK， 那首先我们应该要讲，今天上午大家有听过228国家纪念馆的陈家豪先生讲啊，其实他里头讲到的就是转型正义的过去历史，也牵涉到人民的期待跟。 不会给人民的期待，所以中间会有落差。
So as today, this morning, the 228 Foundation specialist Chen Jiahao, this man just mentioned that if a country,
国家，人民。 期待能够有民主，但是国家不见得会给人民民主。
Okay, so in a country, us, the people, we expect for democracy, but our governments or the governments don't usually provide this to us.
所以他有提到3个概念啊，这个国家是叫做 full control， 第二个就是 misgovernment。 第3个概念是 corrupt， 那这个3个概念呢，刚好是我今天要讲的，接着它的概念来讲，但是它有些地方还没有讲得很清楚，我在这里会讲得更清楚。
So the specialist of 228 Foundation Chen Jiahao, he mentioned 3 main concepts about the topic we just mentioned, that which the government don't usually provide democracy to its people, which is the first, full control, and the second is misgovernment, and third is corrupt. And Professor just mentioned that the specialist didn't mention it like that clearly, and so today from Professor Chen's speech, he will provide like more specific ideas to everyone.
这个228国家纪念馆是228 Memory Museum 哈，然后他们还有一个228的Foundation， 但是他们都把228事件叫做228 Incident， 对Incident。那其实它不是 Incident， 它不是 Incident， 它是故意的，所以它原本就是一个 massacre， 但是怎么会叫 incident？ 对，所以这个定义上面其实就有问题。
So Professor just mentioned that today the specialist mentioned that there is a National 228 Memorial Museum, also the foundation, but they called this as they named this as a 228 incident. But from Professor Chen's perspective, the country did it as on purpose. It is not just an incident.
Not incident. It's genocide and the massacre. That's not incident.但是没有人敢说是 massacre 跟genocide.
Yeah, no one actually have the bravery to tell the truth that this isn't just an incident.
好，那这主要其实这个 KMT 呢，到目前的这个国民政府这民进党政府，其实都是表面上是民主，但是实际上是实行清朝的三大原则啊。
So the political group in Taiwan, one of the political group which is called KMT 国民党, as Professor Chen's perspective, they're actually package themselves as a democratic group, but inside they are actually like authoritarian. Yeah.
OK. 那我们现在以这个大清的清朝 Empire 的，它的有一个人叫做陆清宪，他讲到清朝的弊端有3个，第一个就是旧的吏，第二个弊端就是官吏，第3个弊端就是利益的利。我们简单来说，就是按照旧东西、旧吏。第2个就是高官，大官；第3个就是私利。这3个东西呢，就是所谓的陈家豪上午讲的叫做 misgovernment 的这个组成因素。
So per Professor Chen, he just mentioned about an example from the Qing dynasty, and there is a government whose name is Lu Qingxian. And this guy, they mentioned about the idea that there are 3 major drawbacks in the Qing government. The first one is old cases, like the same old officials and corruption. And this refers to their adherence to outdated case handling methods, following traditional and outdated mindsets, which cause human rights persecution. And the second one he mentioned is Li. Li is like bureaucrats, and this involves the presence of old style handling from the officials, from the same never-changing officials. And the third one, another Li, that means corruption. And the third relates to corruption and personal gains. And so in a fixed and comfortable position for the corrupted officials, transition for justice becomes immensely difficult, but not impossible.
所以我们的司法按照我们的宪法第80条，法官是按照法律来独立审判。可是因为有这3个要素，所以台湾法官不会按照法律独立审判，他是按照旧的东西、旧的例子，然后按照大官就是最高法院的法官，按照个人的利益，所以他们的判决其实离司法独立有一大段距离。
So Professor Chen just explained about the current situation and problems of Taiwan's judicial system. In the judicial aspect, it violates the Article 80 of the Taiwanese Constitution law, and which stipulates an independent judiciary free from any interference. And like what he just previously mentioned about the Qing dynasty, who talks about Li, which is the first Li is old cases, and the second Li is bureaucrats, and the third is corruption. And this is like the same idea.
在台湾的税法也是一样，就是按照利，所以台湾的税法 会瞧不起台湾的法院啊，所以这些都是台湾的现状。
So for the tax system in Taiwan is also in the same situation, the same problem, which also is as the idea that we just mentioned, Li in Qing Dynasty. And so per this situation, our people here in Taiwan, so our people here in Taiwan can't really enjoy true human rights or true democracy.
好，那我们为了更详细的讲，就是旧的这个例，就是像这个旧文化，就是他们有一个臭的酱缸啊，然后把东西全部丢到里头去泡啊，所以这个就是越旧越好。
So as Professor Chen just mentioned, 旧酱缸 is like an old pot. And this old pot fills with a lot of old ideas, old cases, or old mindset that our government usually does. And so this old mindset also persecutes human rights.
那第二个这个官吏啊，官吏就是越大的越好，那其他的官都要听，都要服从这些大的官吏，所以呢，他们就有所谓的流氓官僚，叫 legal bureaucracies。那也就他们用的两个手段，一个就是cheating，第二个手段就是bullying啊。
So the second Professor Chen just mentioned is 流氓官僚, which is called rogue bureaucrats. Yeah, rogue bureaucrats, and
他们用 cheating and bullying.
So this kind of rogue bureaucrats, they usually use weapons or use methods like to cheat someone or to hurt the people.
对。
Yeah.
那第三个就是私利啊，就是私人的利益，就 corruption。那这个东西其实他们主张有一个新的概念，叫做pyramid 啊，就是任何东西就是越上面拿越多钱，然后底下拿越少钱。其实这个就是欧洲，大家如果了解的话，就是意大利的 mafia system。
Chan said that this is a system like a pyramid scheme where the top, like just like the Italian mafia, where the top of the officials earn the most money.
对，那我们可以讲，因为在台湾表面上其实有所谓的司法制度 judicial system， 可是台湾没有权力分立。台湾司法有一个叫做司法的院长，那他可以支配所有法官的人事，可以调动。所以台湾既然没有权力分立，没有孟德斯鸠的权力分立，所以台湾的司法怎么会是真的呢？
So in Taiwan, we used to have 5 separated powers, which is 行政 is the executive yuan, and 立法 is the legislative yuan, and 司法 is the judicial yuan, 考试 is the examine yuan, and the 5th one
control
yuan. And so what Professor mentioned is the 5 yuan supposed to have separated powers, but in Taiwan, the judicial yuan, their power is like really big that even
对，所以没有孟德斯鸠的权力分立，在台湾司法根本不能独立啊。
So the judicial yuan is not an independent yuan in Taiwan. Their power is not. They don't have independence.
那我们早上我们这个228这个陈家豪就提到这 full control misgovernment corruption， 那这个东西在台湾的司法跟台湾的税法，其实就是保有这个特色特别强的地方。对。 对对对，对 ，the misgovernment 的 poor control、misgovernment 跟 corrupt， 那其实在台湾的judicial system 跟 tax system 其实就是这3个特质。OK。
So the situation in Taiwan now we're facing that we previously mentioned the Taiwan's judicial and tax system is just like the specialist mentioned, that Chen Jiahao mentioned, full control, misgovernment, and corrupt. And these are the 3 biggest issues that we're facing.
其实1947年的228事件，其实它是出自一个茶烟税 （tobacco tax） 啊，那其实是公卖局的人查烟，然后竟然带有枪支，然后对老百姓开枪，所以才引起这个问题。所以我们知道，抽税的系统在台湾跟军队、跟警察、竟然有武器。那你知道这种制度呢，是来自于这个继朝廷的制度。那继朝廷是一个美国的共产党，那它是影响到 KMT 的税务制度，但是继朝廷的制度，还有他发给奖金的制度，一直到目前台湾的税务制度都是这样子，所以他们有税务奖励金。那这也影响到太极门案，为什么他一定要执行？因为他们是没有人管得到他们的，他们是一个过去大清时代和继朝廷时代沿流下来的税务制度。
So he just mentioned about the 228 incident is originated from the Public Monopoly Bureau's investigation into illicit tobacco trading, and surprisingly, they are actually allowed to carry guns, firearms, and this issue was connected to espionage activities, and similar to the chaotic undercover operation in the Ministry of Finance, it still influences to the present time. Yeah. And so during the Japanese colonial period, Taiwanese people weren't permitted to study law and politics. And so, however, under the ruling on Kuomintang, the other political group, they were allowed to do so. And so this revealed the problem of Kuomintang's legal and political system. And regarding to the Taijimen case, the judiciary followed the outdated old cases, old officials, and corruption in this private interest approach. And so due to Taiwan's judiciary's lack of emphasis on human rights, the wrongful verdict in the Taijimen case for year 1992 wasn't only not overturned despite being illegal, but they unlawfully seized Taijimen's sacred land in Miaoli. And this was all in the pursuit of old cases, old officials, and corruption.
这个翻译的比我讲的还好。其实，在日本时代，他是不让台湾人学法律跟政治。那国民党犯了一个最严重的错误呢，就是让台湾人学法律跟政治。所以呢，今天就有陈志龙教授呢，因为懂得他们在玩什么，因为我是学法律的，学政治的，所以呢，台湾人学法律政治，我们就知道原来这些法律政治呢都是假的。所以在太极门案例呢，它表面上呢说我们是一个 rule by law of law 但是其实是假的。其实真的我们都是还是现在还必须要transition 了transition 呢in 这个 transition 呢justice 现在还在努力，因为我们没有 human right， 我们每个人没有 human dignity， 所以不是人，他不把你当人来看，所以这个是一个个人是这样。那在太极门案例呢，就刚好显示出来， 台湾的司法跟台湾的税法其实都不是遵照宪法、遵照人权，所以没有自由、没有民主、没有法治、没有人权，所以整个都没有。因为这个他们超过宪法之上，他们忽略了法律的保障。
This is a long speech, but I will try to summarize it. Okay, so Professor just made a joke that the Kuomintang, one of the politic group in Taiwan, the most the wrong decision that they make is to let the Taiwanese people learn politics and human rights, because this leads to the results of everyone here in Taiwan. We know about our rights. We know about democracy eventually, and so let's get back to the main topic that we're talking about, the trends in transitional justice. And this is really important because this affects the pursuit of human rights, the pursuit of democracy, and the pursuit of freedom of anything, freedom of belief, freedom of religion. And this is a really important value that we need to pursue.
Okay. 所以我们今天3个主题其实都非常重要。第一个是history of human rights， 第二个主题是 trend in transitional justice， 第3个是这个 authoritarian persecution 啊。那我们这3个主题都非常重要。那其实，在台湾这个3个主题都被忽略掉，那也以至于台湾表面上是民主。可是实际上是 mafia， 是台湾整个系统是 mafia system， 所以也是 larger bureaucracies， 所以台湾必须大家要清楚，要清楚，台湾人权一定要获得，人性尊严一定要获得，所以太极门案件只是台湾不民主，然后这个枉法裁判这些里头的一个经典的案例，其实还有很多的案例。所以我在我的龙哥打怪呢，都是在谈这个问题。我们有超多的案例都被这个judicial mafia system 所破坏，还有被这个税法所破坏。然后这些税法的人，他每天捞很多的钱，那其实真的那些也不符合国家机密保护法，国家超收的钱应该要透明化，所以他们整个不给你透明，所以这个东西人民缴的税，但是不知道税流到哪里去，然后如果欠钱用了，就像太极门案呢，就把苗栗的土地呢整个给它没收，所以这个东西，这个值得全世界人权学者，今天各位人权学者来这边，值得大家关注这个议题。
So Mr. Chen has said that today our topic is human rights and history of human rights, trends in transitional justice, and authoritarian persecution. And this has been an ongoing transition, still ongoing in Taiwan. And in Chen Zilong's Professor Chen Zilong's channel, he also said that there are many cases of abuse from our Taiwanese government on justice and taking the taxpayers' money into their own pocket because of their greed. And on Mr. Chen's YouTube channel, Taijimen case is just one of the big case for the international to study on, but also there are many different cases ongoing in Taiwan currently happening. And Mr. Chen exposes these cases on his channel so that more people have the knowledge to understand what is happening in Taiwan and how people should have their own rights and here in Taiwan as a democratic country citizen.
好，那今天非常感谢各位这个敬爱的贵宾啊，来自各个国家，然后我们希望他能够知道台湾的情况，也能够帮助我们能够获得人性的尊严，获得真正的民主、真正的自由、真正的法治、真正的人权。谢谢各位。
So today, Professor Chen wants to show his grateful that he is grateful that so many international scholars and every distinguished guest here to come here and work together with us. And so let's work together and make Taiwan a better country full of human rights and democracy. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so before we commence the panel discussion, we are privileged to welcome a distinguished expert from Taiwan who will share his insights on the unfortunate shortcomings in the implementation on human rights and transitional justice in high-profile cases in Taiwan, and notably involving power abuses by prosecutor Ho Kwan-ren, which is the prosecutor you have already known about, who originated the Taijimen case. And so it is our honor to introduce University Assistant Professor Wei Si-cong, who will present his perspective on this crucial matter. Let's give him a big hand.
Thank you， 谢谢哈。那我今天用中文来发表哈，会比较顺畅，因为我们那个翻译的也顺道跟我们翻译一下哈，国外学者哈。好，那我今天非常高兴，很荣幸能够受邀来这边来发表哈，有关于台湾的后威权时代，到底台湾发生了哪些公权力滥权甚至违法的事件啊。
So today we'll be discussing and uncovering some of the cases that has happened in Taiwan.
好，那首先刚才陈教授有提到台湾是出在体制结构的问题。
So just like what Professor Chan has mentioned just now, that the Taiwan's government problem happens in the system.
因为台湾在长期以来不是被殖民就是实施威权跟集权跟党国这样的体制之下运作。
So in Taiwan's history, Taiwan has either been colonized and controlled, or has been controlled by authoritarian persecution.
现在的执政党来发觉这个问题，所以他们立了一个法，叫转型正义。但是它限制在1992年之前。
So currently, the government has seen the problem that has been showing on the surface of the government system, but they have given a law to solve this, but this law was only was available for before 1992. 1992
Yes. 那我们从一些国际上转型正义成功的一些国家里边，我们看到他们并没有限制这个年到某一个年度。
So from the successful countries that has transitioned to justice, we have never seen this kind of law that has a time limit to it.
因此，在1992年之后所发生的公权力违法暴力的这种破坏事件，在台湾是非常困难得到正义的转型。
So that is why after 1992, any kinds of authoritarian persecution against the citizens or in the country has been really hard to overcome.
尤其严重的是，在体制内握有权力的这些官僚，还是会应用他的公权力的暴力来迫害人民。
Especially a few high government officials that has been in the system for a long time, they still has the power to put stress and abuse the people with their power.
好，那接下来我就介绍几个案件，来证明，台湾在法治，跟这个人权跟法律，等等的层面，还有非常大的空间，必须要去改变。
So Professor Wei will be introducing a few cases that will be able to shed light to the level of improvement that Taiwan can improve on.
我们非常高兴的欢迎这些知名重量级的国际学者来台湾跟我们交流，也知道第一手的事件能够帮助台湾进行改革。
We are very privileged and very extremely thankful for all the international scholars and professionals who have come here and to know the cases right away to help us in solving these problems.
我今天报告的核心的公权力的暴力者，就是一个检察官侯宽仁。
So today my main focus will be on a person, a prosecutor called Ho Kwan Ren.
第一个案例在1996年的周仁生的案件。
The first case is the Zhou Rensheng case in 1996.
发生在1996年，总共缠讼了24年，起诉了200名的被告。
It has lasted for 24 years and with over 200 person.
其中以警员、警官38人最多。
Mainly consists of police officers.
这个案件最后被判有罪的只有8个人。
Involving this case, 200 person were prosecuted, but at the end there were only 8 person that has truly been prosecuted.
其中在台湾非常少见的，就是在2个月之内有4位的警官或警员自杀。
It is extremely rare to see that and within 2 months there were 4 high up police officers who has suicided.
1位投河自尽，2位投河自尽。
2 jumped into the river.
2位在自己的寝室或办公室举枪自杀。
2 executed, shot dead themselves in the office.
从这简单的数字跟事件，明眼人一听就知道，这里面一定有很大的公权力的迫害事件。
Just from seeing the scope of this case from this incident, we can tell that this case is nothing ordinary and that nothing that simple. It must be complicated.
这个所谋就是侯宽仁，背后一定有一个结构。
And this manipulator of these cases is Ho Kwan Ren, and there must be hands behind this case manipulating everything.
第2个 case 我来谈1996年的太极门的案件。
There were 2 cases in 1996 relating to Taijiman case.
我想在座的这个贵宾跟国际的学者专家对这个案件应该也很深入的研究跟了解。
I'm sure that our guests here today and the scholars and professionals here today are very familiar with the case.
这个案件 已经被官方包括检察院或其他的官方都认定这是一个违反这个法治残害人权的事件。
This case has been internationally been shown light on as proof of abuse of human rights.
非常荒唐的就是，他在4月17日，就是7月16日公布起诉书，里面把养小鬼写在起诉书里面。
On the paper of prosecutor Ho Kwan Ren, he wrote and fabricated evidence of Taijimen having goblins.
隔天再派出这个大队人马到其他的各道馆，拿了纸箱要去抓小鬼。
The next day, they brought a box and they had people here to look for the goblins.
然后社会哗然，他才紧急去询问洪掌门人、洪道子掌门人有没有养小鬼。
Before even asking the Zhangmenren, the chairman of Taijimen, Dr. Hong Daozi, they already started searching for the goblins, and it was only after searching, after the day, they started asking the chairman about if there is any goblins.
这严重违反了法律的正当的程序。
This has violated the procedure of law, of how things should proceed.
更离谱的是，他在隔年的5月5日接受电台的访问。
What more is, on the next year, on the radio, in an interview with prosecutor Ho Kwan Ren,
主持人李世端先生问他：“太极门掌门人听到你这样起诉他，他有什么反应？”
The MC of the radio station asked Ho Kwan Ren what was Taijimen's chairman's reaction when Ho Kwan Ren asked him about the goblins.
侯官人回答：“他当然是否认，但是我从他的眼神看到一丝闪过一丝的阴影。”
Ho Kwan Ren said that the chairman definitely denied it at first, but I saw a ray of light through his eyes.
依我的办案直觉，就是他应该有养小鬼这个事。
From my sense and my feelings, I can sense that Chairman Dr. Hong Daozi has been doing wrongful doings.
这在民主法治强调科学办案的国家，看到这种事，一定是觉得非常的荒谬。
In a democratic country where scientific evidence should be upheld, it's a case that simply cannot be explained and have been seen as something that's ridiculous.
甚至应该是停止调查。
And especially if this happens, the case should stop immediately during the investigation.
但是他一路还是不断的升迁往上升。
But no matter what he did, he still was able to rank up in the government officials and still roaming today.
这在人权法治的国家是一个非常恶劣的一种的影响，它会造成其他人认为我要这样乱干才可以升官。
This is a deadly example that shows more of the government officials that's working in the government that this kind of example and behavior is tolerated, and it promotes more government officials to do the same thing.
好，那第二个案例我来谈云林的废土案。2002年的，在台湾有一个云林县的废弃土的案件。
The next case I will talk about is the Yunlin waste land case in 2002.
这个的承办者也是侯宽仁。
The person that was responsible for this case was also Ho Kwan Ren.
被监察院2016年12月调查的报告里面。
In the research paper from the report from the legislative yuan from
2016年。
From 2016 December 12.
那监察院里面提出的报告指出3点为失。
In the report of the executive yuan, there were 3 points that were wrong.
第一，曲解当事人的本意。当事者就是证人的本意。
First of all, that the first point that's wrongful was twisting the meaning of the witness.
第二，自问自答，出言恐吓。
And the second is fabricating the answer of the witness.
第三，擅改口供，伪造笔录。
And the third is to intimidate the witness into making them say things that never happened.
这3点对于司法的侦办、司法的公正是非常重要的点。
For the legal procedure, these are extremely wrongful doings.
接下来是2006年台北市长马英九的特别会案。
The third incident is President Ma Ying-jeou's case. That's from 2006.
同样的，被指为笔录不实。
Same. It was
笔录跟事实不符。
manipulating witness testimonies.
而且这是经过法官的认证。
And it has been confirmed by the court.
后来律师团也对侯宽仁提起告诉，他伪造文书。
And it was overthrown by the lawyers of the team from Ma Ying-jeou.
这个案子法官认为，这个某一个证人在问讯时，他的笔录是书记官做的。
From this case, there were incidents of fabricating evidence, and it has been found.
侯宽仁并不是笔录的制作人。
Ho Kwan Ren wasn't the person that fabricated the evidence.
不构成伪造文书的主体。
He wasn't the direct. He wasn't. There weren't evidence of him directing this incident.
法官这个认定，在台湾的司法也是一个严重的伤害。
But on the judicial of Taiwan, it has been a harmful case.
因为检察官永远不用负伪造文书的责任，因为那是书记官写的。
Because the prosecutor never needs to bear the responsibility of these cases from Ho Kwan Ren's position.
连负连带的责任都不必。
Not even a bit of responsibility needs to be held from Ho Kwan Ren's position.
好， 所以最后判决他无罪哈。
At last, it was said in the court that the only way was to give Ho Kwan in the court saying he is guilty.
第4个案件发生在2007年前总统李秀莲的国务机要会案。
Sorry, not finding prosecutor Ho Kwan not guilty, and the next case is from Liu Xiulian, Vice President Liu Xiulian's case on State Affairs Fund case in 2007.
李秀莲副总统指控侯官人没有传信他做那个调查，就起诉他。
Where Ho he faced criticism for selective prosecution and improper investigation.
最后李秀莲被判决无罪。
And at last, Liu Xiulian, Vice President, was found not guilty.
上述这些4个举出来的案例，侯官人在办案的时候都违反侦查不公开，大肆的利用媒体。
During all these cases, Ho Kwan was never transparent to the media, but only doing window dressing and showing and acting as knowledgeful in front of the media and doing shows to manipulate the media.
刚才跟大家举出那4位自杀者，只是我们知道的。
The four officers that has suicided were only the ones that we know of, meaning that there are many more that we don't know.
也是侯官人这个人造成的因素。在其他的案件里面，在台湾的公权力也经常在媒体看到，因为被公权力暴力而自杀的事件是不少的。好，造成这个家破人亡的事件。OK， 还有一点点。
His action in these cases have allegedly caused significant harm, resulting in police officers committing suicide and the ruined careers of individuals who were wrongfully prosecuted. And there are many more.
我们盘查的侯官人在太极门案件当中，总共犯了这个涉嫌犯了20种法律，146条法条。
In the Taichman case, Ho Kwan was implicated in a total of 20 legal violations and 146 legal articles, including the Constitution, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the Criminal Code, the Code of Criminal Procedure, the Code of Conduct for Prosecutors, the Ethics Code for Prosecutors, the Operational Rules for Confidential Investigations, the Administrative Procedure Act, the Civil Service Act, the Civil Service Disciplinary Act, the Personal Information Protection Act, Civil Servant Ethical Standards, the Anti-Corruption Act, the State Compensation Act, the Civil Servant Administrative Neutrality Act, Administrative Penalties, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Implementation Acts of both international covenants, and the Rome Statutes.
在台湾，这样的公权力的违法滥权，极少数会被究责，或是被刑事判决。
In Taiwan's law, with Taiwan system, there are only little to none cases that can overthrow with current legal laws in Taiwan.
这就是陈志荣教授所讲的，台湾的法治是假的。
Just like Professor Chen has said, Taiwan's democracy is a fake democracy.
台湾的现况就是如此，所留下的都是集权、威权、保护官权的这样的体制跟法律。
What is left in Taiwan are things that has been rotting, government officials that has been rotting on the higher ups for many years with the laws and cases that has been rotting for many years, and it is hard to change.
在检察官或执法者违法滥权造成冤狱而获得赔偿的案件当中，检察官被这个究责或追讨他的这个国家赔偿少之又少。
In cases where the prosecutor have lost the case and has needed to be punished, and where the government will compensate to the victims of cases has been little to almost none.
我举一个例子，就是一个蔡真宜侦办手机抢夺案，这个人被关了119天，国家赔偿59万。蔡真宜。
In one of the prosecutors of Cai Zhenyi phone case, the government has given 59,000 for compensation only.
这个案子检察官被追偿33万。
Sorry, 590,000 as compensation, and the prosecutor had to pay for his wrongful doings 330,000.
侯官人侦办太极门案，总共有4个人被冤狱470天，总国赔184万，侯官人担负的赔偿是0。
So the wrongful doing of prosecutor Cai has been held for 119 days, but for Ho Kuan there were 4 wrongful prosecutors, and which held for 470 days. The government, the country, has given repaid money in 1,840,000, but Prosecutor Ho had no responsibility where he didn't need to pay any dollar.
最后，我想跟大家分享的是，台湾的体制过去国民党的一党专政，民进党挑战国民党要民主自由，最后由民进党这个换党执政。现在换党的几轮下来，看起来台湾的体制问题完全没有改变。我个人认为，第3党的崛起在台湾非常有必要。然后用清新的第3党，没有包袱的第3党，由民主法治真正清廉，真的爱这个国家，然后进行大幅的改造，台湾就有救了。
From KMT not solving these problems from the system to the Green Party from Taiwan, the Minjindang taking over after many years, still not solving this problem. I wish that there can be a new party where they can truly fix this problem, this underlying problem.
台湾需要 help， 也需要国际的友人、学者、专家多给台湾一些帮助，让台湾真正进到民主、人权、法治的国家。
Taiwan needs help Taiwan needs help from not only within Taiwan, but also international scholars who can give strength and voice to shine light on the problems that's happening in Taiwan, to make Taiwan truly walk into a democratic country.
Thank you all. Thank you.
And so now we are privileged to be joined by a distinguished assembly of international experts and scholars who will share their valuable insights on the challenges and prospects of human rights, transitional justice, and authoritarian persecution faced by Taiwan and beyond. And their expertise, underscored by diverse experiences and historical knowledge, will bring light to the discussions today. And leading off, we would like to introduce Professor Massimo Introvini, founder and managing director of Center for Studies on New Religions and editor-in-chief of Bitter Winter. Dr. Massimo has contributed to the advocacy on human rights and freedom of belief. And unfortunately, he isn't able to be with us here today, but he has sent us his speech detailing his perspectives. And now let's welcome him.
Originating from restoring justice after the dictatorial regime fell in Latin America and then in Eastern Europe, and it was consecrated by the commission set up by Nelson Mandela after the head of apartheid in South Africa and headed by the Anglican Archbishop Desmond Tutu. However, the spirit of transitional justice, rectifying justice after a time of chaos and injustice, is very old. Anthropologists and historians have long studied the passage from vengeance to justice. Primitive societies are dominated by the idea of vengeance. If you kill my brother, I should exact vengeance against you and kill your brother. The problem is, I may kill your two brothers, and so your family will need to kill yet another brother. And the system of vendetta can go on for years and years, and sometimes for centuries. Scholars of the Italian beautiful island called Sardinia have studied how vendettas in the mountains among families go on for years and indeed centuries, and members of families kill each other without even remembering what originated this. In fact, although now things are finally changing, vendetta was so common that until the beginning of the 20th century, when a boy was born in the Sardinian mountains, a boy, not a girl, the parish priest would bless the boy and also bless some gun violence and give to him so he could continue the vendetta against the enemy families when he will grow up. So historians regard as a great progress in the path of humanity when private vengeance was replaced by public justice, when individuals and families were not simply seeking revenge against those who had committed crimes against them. They would go to a judge and a court of law who would impartially administer justice there. But for many centuries, the two notions of vengeance and justice were very confused, particularly after periods of turmoil, bad government and injustice. Those involved in the previous bad governments were simply lynched or killed, not so much judged by tribunals, and that's something after the revolutions we continue to see, unfortunately, to this very day. And also opponents or those who have been responsible of wrongdoing were tortured or sentenced to cruel punishment. I would mention two important figures which helped humanity, I would say, reflecting on the difference between vengeance and justice. One is the famous Italian legal scholar Cesare Beccaria, who lived in the 18th century. We can say that Beccaria had the typical view of a man of the Enlightenment, of the French Lumière, about the Middle Ages, and today historians will disagree with him about his interpretation of how justice was administered in the Middle Ages. But the main point of Beccaria was to abolish torture and cruel corporal punishment for the Christian or the common era with Emperor Wen of Han. Emperor Wen of Han was famous for being a very wise and moderate emperor. Of course, he's also famous for introducing the examination for mandarins and public bureaucrats, which eliminated a lot of favoritism and injustice. But he is also famous for trying to eliminate torture and replace the death penalty with whipping. Of course, today we disagree with whipping too, but it was better than the death penalty. And he dreamed of a world where criminals or those who have been part of past bad or unjust regimes would simply be gentle, persuaded to amend their way or reform without the need of death penalty, cruel punishment, and even jail. Some of these ideas are utopian, but I believe both Beccaria and Emperor Wen of Han teach us what the transitional justice should be all about. We should not seek vengeance. We should seek a restoration of a harmony. And I believe this is also important for Taiwan and for the Taiji case. In the spirit of a return to conscience, we and Taiji men are not asking for vengeance. Vengeance is not part of a world based on conscience, but we are asking for a practical, political, wise rectification of injustice, which means giving back to Taiji men their due punish with humanity, because punishment is not vengeance. Sometimes it has to do with justice. People who committed serious wrongdoings, be they prosecutors or tax bureaucrats, and most importantly, restore the reputation of Taijimen, Shiku, and Dise who have been slandered. So, in promoting transitional justice, which of course should extend not only to the authoritarian period in Taiwan, but also to the post-authoritarian period and what happened in 1996 in the political crackdown against religious movement, we should remember the true spirit of transitional justice. We can ask transitional justice with good conscience. We should not be afraid. We should strongly believe we are in the right place. We have in our right to ask for transitional justice, because transitional justice is not about vengeance. It's about justice, and everybody needs and deserves justice, particularly after a transition from an authoritarian to a non-authoritarian regime. We all love justice. Taijimen surely deserve justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Professor Massimo Introvinia's words, for shedding light on transitional justice through crucial historical figures like Cesare Beccaria and Emperor Wen of Han. And vengeance is not the way to harmony, and Taijimen has never sought vengeance, but the correction of the system, to have the government to uphold justice with humane punishments on wrongful actions while returning Taijimen what should be rightfully theirs.
And next, we would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Thierry Vallet, Director of Coordination des Associations et des Particuliers pour la Liberté de Conscience in France. Let's welcome him.
So first, thank you to inviting me to this conference here in Taiwan. I'm very proud to be here, and I will deliver my speech on the transitional justice in a democratic country. Transitional justice is a complex and essential process that a democratic country must undertake to address past human rights violations, atrocities, and injustice. Today, we will examine the key components and strategies needed to ensure a successful transitional justice process in a democratic country like Taiwan. We will see how the implementation of transitional justice in a democratic country can emphasize the importance of inclusiveness, accountability, restorative justice, and sustained engagement in achieving a just and harmonious society. Transitional justice refers to the policies and process that a country uses to deal with its past, particularly during transition from conflict, authoritarian rule, or period of oppression or state institution abuses. Transitional justice plays a central role in establishing a rule of law, upholding democratic principles, and promoting reconciliation and national unity. An effective transitional justice process can contribute to lasting peace, reconciliation, and a stronger democracy. In a democratic society, the pursuit of transitional justice is not only a legal obligation, but also a moral imperative. First and foremost, for transitional justice to be effective in a democratic country, we must ensure that the process is inclusive and participatory. The voices of victims, survivors, and affected communities must be heard and respected. Their experiences and perspectives are essential in shaping true and accountability mechanisms. it is also crucial to promote public dialogue and open discussions about the past. Civil society, organizations, academia, and the media have a responsibility to facilitate these conversations and promote empathy and understanding among citizens through open forums, through commissions, conferences, etc., to provide a safe space for those affected to share their stories and seek recognition of the injustice they have suffered. Impartial and independent judicial bodies should be established to investigate and persecute perpetrators of human rights abuses to ensure that no one is above the law. Impartial and independent judicial bodies should be established to investigate and persecute perpetrators. It should be noted that Taiwan is a world leader in this regard with its unique institution called the Control Yuan, whose function is to monitor and, if necessary, censure and impeach government officials. There are three ways which transitional justice is expected to influence democratic institution building: delegitimizing past perpetrators and potential spoilers, implementing restorative justice, promoting reform, and empowering previously marginalized actors. In 2009, Taiwan incorporated the ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the ICESCR, International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, into its domestic law. Those two covenants are considered higher than all other laws in Taiwan. Those covenants require the besides offering compensation and public apologies to the victims, perpetrators of human rights violations should be brought to justice. Taiwanese authorities must delegitimize and sanction persecutors who, Kang Ji and former Finance Minister Chiang Ching-ford, for their abuses and violation of the law against the Taiji men. In 2002, the Control Yuan found prosecutors who, guilty of multiple violations of the law in the Taiji men case, and demanded to take disciplinary measures against him. But the case was dismissed under the protection of the Ministry of Justice, and the Control Yuan failed to make him accountable for his abuse and false accusations against the Taiji men. This year, Mr. Hu may be promoted to the position of Deputy Director General of the Anti-Corruption Bureau. In addition to legal measures, we must also emphasize the importance of restorative justice. Beyond holding perpetrators accountable, the goal of transitional justice should be to repair the harm done to victims and communities. This could include reparations, compensation, and rehabilitation programs. Emphasizing restorative justice over retribution can promote healing and reconciliation, creating a more stable and cohesive society. In Taiwan, emphasizing restorative justice by balancing accountability with restorative measures is essential to healing the wounds of the past, providing reparations and rehabilitation to the Taiji men. Restorative justice requires recognition of past actions of their consequences. Men decide of their grievances, acknowledge the Taiwanese authorities should acknowledge the wrong and abuse committed Taiwanese government. Formal apology, the Taiwanese government and relevant authorities can be a gesture of respect and recognition of the harm. The Taiwanese government should focus on providing reparations and redress to the Taiwan, such as financial compensation, support for community projects, measures to rehabilitate the organization reputation, and providing them and funds to bring new academic place, the Swiss Villa, which was destroyed as a result of the sale of the property by the Taiwan National Tax Bureau. Highlighting the institutional failures and human rights violations possible, it is regret that the traditional justice can play an important role in legislative, constitutional, and institutional, and also in reform by the rule of law. May not trigger risks about it provoke and of scrutiny of human practices that is may increase government sensitivity to the issue. Conclusion. National justice is not an abstract concept. The concrete was a more democratic country. And so by adhering to key principles, implementing effective strategies, addressing challenges, and sustaining commitment, a democratic nation like Taiwan, by ensuring inclusivity, upholding the rule of law, prioritizing the restorative justice, promoting education and awareness, and encouraging open dialogue can pave the way for reconciliation, healing, and a stronger democratic foundation. The process may be challenging, but its successful completion can lead to a more just and harmonious society for present and future generations. It is a duty and responsibility of the Taiwanese government to implement transitional justice for the Taiji-men, to protect its institutions and citizens from corruption, and to uphold its democratic values and vision of human rights. More than anyone else, the Taiji-men deserve to have their honor restored, to have the injustices they suffered recognized as injustices and redressed, and to benefit for transitional justice in their long-running case. And Taiwan, together with the Taiji-men, could work hand in hand to build a future in which the mistakes of the past serve as a reminder of the values that Taiwanese people hold dear and the commitment to justice, peace, and democracy. I thank you.
Thank you so much to Mr. Thierry Vallet for highlighting the imperative role of transitional justice in strengthening democracy. Despite adapting ICCPR and ICESCR principles, Taiwan has fallen short in cases like Taiji-men. This underscores a critical opportunity for Taiwan to reinforce its commitment to human rights and democracy through restorative justice.
And now we would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Willie Fultry, Director of Human Rights Without Frontiers. Let's welcome him.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to see such a big audience, people interested in our presentations. I also want to thank the organizers of the visit of the museum this morning. It was really a discovery of a number of issues concerning the country. So I'm from Brussels, Human Rights Without Frontiers, and my paper is about the EU and transitional justice. I will repeat EU quite a number of times, so for those who may be not familiar with this acronym, it's European Union. So, and I will also tell the technique that for the second part of my presentation, I remove a number of paragraphs to remain within the limit of 10 minutes maximum. So, ending impunity for serious crimes against human rights and humanitarian norms is an important EU and UN objective. It is essential in overcoming the legacy of past conflict and building the basis of stable, peaceful societies, as shown by the experience of societies that have taken this path in recent decades. The EU has developed a comprehensive approach to help non-EU countries implement transitional justice. First section is about the historical background of transitional justice in general. The field of transitional justice emerged in the late 1980s and early 1990s in response to the political transitions that took place during that time in Latin America and Eastern Europe. The implementation of transitional justice measures depended on the national context, varying greatly, for example, among former communist regimes. Today, the focus of transitional justice mechanisms has moved to countries afflicted by conflict in Africa and Asia. The International Criminal Court, established in 2002, aims to complement national systems where these are unable to bring to justice for serious crimes those in the highest positions of responsibility. Transitional justice aims both at holding those responsible for serious crimes to account and providing redress to victims, as well as building fairer and resilient justice systems able to secure reconciliation and the transition to democracy. It includes several measures. First, prosecution of leaders and high officials of former regimes. Communist leaders in some Eastern European countries and leaders of military juntas in Latin America, so they stood trial in international tribunals with different outcomes, whether it is in Argentina, Guatemala, also in Serbia. For example, the former president died before the end of the trial. And in Côte d'Ivoire, the former president was acquitted. Second point, prosecution independently of rank of perpetrators of grave crimes, particularly genocide, as in Rwanda, for example, in 1994. Three, lustration policies that include vetting procedure before holding public office. These were central to the efforts of former communist countries in Europe, such as Germany, Czechia, Estonia, etc., in overcoming their past and building stable democracies. But they were not free of judicial problems and controversies regarding concordance between lustration laws with human rights. Four, truth initiatives. They range from the opening of secret services archives, as in some former communist countries, to the Truth Commission, for example, in South Africa. While in Cambodia in 1995, a non-governmental organization assumed the task of preserving the memory of genocide. Fifth, rehabilitation and redress for those convicted on political grounds or for persecuted groups. And sixth, amnesty, which is the most controversial approach to transitional justice, as it precludes justice for victims, but it can be instrumental in some cases in ending bloody conflicts. However, amnesty cannot apply in serious crimes against humanity and other similar crimes, as made clear in a number of landmark decisions of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. In Latin America, amnesty was granted broadly to allow transitions but amnesty laws were later struck down for grave crimes in Argentina, Guatemala, Peru, and other countries, not in Brazil. Next part is about the policy of the European Union concerning the transitional justice. The EU is an important player in the field of transitional justice. It has developed a comprehensive approach to help non-EU countries implement transitional justice, closing the accountability gap, fighting impunity, and supporting transitional justice is among the priorities of the European Union Action Plan on Human Rights and Democracy for the period 2020-2024. An EU policy framework on support to transitional justice provides guidance for both EU institutions and member states based on the main UN elements. First, in terms of criminal justice, reform, just examples, reform of national criminal legislation, and alternative ways like mediation or traditional courts to provide justice. In terms of search for the truth, the EU promotes truth-seeking initiatives based on international law and best practice. In terms of reparation, the EU encourages victim-focused approach to reparations. And concerning guarantees of non-recurrence of such tragic events, here I will show them, the EU opposes amnesties for war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, or gross violations of human rights in line with the UN position. The EU supports the ICC, International Criminal Court. It helps countries in situations of fragility and provides financial assistance for transitional justice initiatives and related issues. And the EU has put in place multi-annual funding programs with partner countries like Burundi, Central African Republic, Colombia, Rwanda, South Sudan, and the Gambia. Just to clarify a point, European Union, 27 member states, but there are three main organizations inside the European Union. You have the European Council, European Commission, and then something that is probably more familiar to you, the European Parliament. And so I will now talk about the position of the European Parliament. European Parliament has repeatedly underlined the need to put an end to impunity for grave crimes under international law. In a resolution dated 19th March 2019 on building EU capacity on conflict prevention and mediation, the Parliament declared that a pool of experts covering reconciliation and transitional justice was needed at EU level. In another resolution in January 2021, the Parliament proposed to promote EU commitment to fight against impunity by establishing, and that's a very interesting proposal, an EU special representative on international humanitarian law and international justice, and underlined the need to ensure justice for all victims of violations of international human rights and humanitarian law. A recent resolution last year in February called for the promotion of transitional justice processes, empowering civil society, victims, marginalized and vulnerable populations, increasing the role of women, young people in transitional justice. Transitional justice measures do not only address past atrocities, they are also forward-looking. As the armed conflict in Ukraine is ongoing and atrocities continue to be committed systematically, it is important to keep documenting the human rights violations perpetrated by Russia the aggressor country, not only for accountability purposes, but also to know the truth of what happened and help determine the type and form of reparations. If there is a peace agreement, the inclusion of transitional justice issues will be important, but there may not be any negotiations and no peace agreement, as in the case of the Korean Peninsula 60 years ago. In such a case of a stuck or frozen conflict, Europol, Interpol, International Criminal Court will have to unite their efforts to hunt and prosecute Russian war criminals until the last one, as long as they will live, as it happened to the Nazi criminals of World War II. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Willy Foltre, for sharing with us insightful complex issues and the EU's instrumental role in advocating for justice. As we share and bring each nation forward in peace building, it is crucial to share effective methods along the way.
Now we would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Hans Knott, President of the Knott Foundation for Freedom of Religion or Belief in Netherlands. Let's welcome him.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here today. This is my first time in Taiwan, and I really enjoy it. Thank you. And you're welcome in the Netherlands if you ever come there. Today I would like to discuss the notion of transitional justice in the aftermath of any form of long-standing conflict. History has countless examples of dominant and influential regimes that have left a legacy of damage in its tracks. And the longer such regimes dominate the culture, the longer it may take to socially solve them. Totalitarian regimes have a tendency to cause anger and a sense of injustice amongst many victims they left behind, those who will seek for justice in the form of revenge or vengeance. We know of long conflicting interests between nations in South and East Asia, the Levant, the current so-called Middle East, in Africa, Europe, the Balkans, and the Americas. There's hardly any nation that has not been touched by the traumas of authoritarian abuse. Such traumas can be recognized by these cultures grappling with a loss of trust for those in authority, for example. Like in my own culture, in the Netherlands, which has a long history of internal conflict with German occupation, English and French influence. As a consequence, it has found a way to deal with it. Dutch people are allergic to people in authority and the demand for obedience from the upper echelons. Friends who become bosses suddenly automatically are seen as villains. The way the Dutch try to deal with it is by redefining leadership in the form of fatherhood, rather than hierarchical top-down leadership. And the decision-making process in organizations has become rather collaborative leadership style, in which it is safe for subordinates to express opinions. Unjust regimes in nations or corporate world have long-term effects, such as unrest, a slow-moving bureaucracy with bureaucrats dragging their feet due to a conflict of conscience, and due to corruption of the system, a failing judiciary, inequality, fake news and gossip, an increase of spreading conspiracy theories, ridicule, mockery, and jokes about perpetrators, skirmishes, even revolt, revolution, and revenge. In the end, the system collapses. We have many examples in history that can attest to this. It may take many centuries for these societies to be healed from such traumas. As an organizational anthropologist, I have studied and developed an eye for the effects of bad leadership on corporate or national cultures. In the Netherlands, for example, there are still overtones of the so-called 80-year war between the Netherlands and Spain some 400 years ago. And for those who know the French, their culture cannot be described without talking about the French Revolution under Napoleon Bonaparte, ousting King Louis XIV 200 years ago. The situation in Taiwan cannot be understood without a well-defined understanding of its history with mainland China and other nations worldwide which dealt with it. Then we can ask, what are the options to resolve a conflict, even conflict of interest? Or, better yet, is it perhaps possible to learn to manage conflicts so that it does not get out of hand? I learned this concept from Bonner Ritchie, a professor who trained the negotiators of the Palestinian Liberation Organization under Yasser Arafat, preparatory to the Camp David peace accords with USA President Jimmy Carter, and the eventual signing of the framework of peace in the Middle East and the framework of the conclusion of the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel in 1979. As Professor Ritchie studied the Middle East cultures, he noticed that they were deeply rooted within a social value framework that claims that there never will be peace, that conflict is real and an essential part of life. The idea of peace, he describes, was a Western, or rather Christian notion, which does not work well in the Middle East. Moreover, the objective of the so-called peace negotiators between the Palestinians, the Israelis, and Egypt was not to resolve the conflict, but to learn to manage it. The conflict must not get out of hand. It was about controlling the situation, not solving the conflict of interest. For them, without dealing with the conflict, there is no learning, no development, and no reason to boast of peace. One cannot earn one's way into heaven without conflict. Professor Ritchie noticed, however, that even though the adults may want to negotiate for conflict management, all parties agreed that it would be preferential to negotiate for conflict resolution for their offspring. They would want peace for their children. Hence the statement by Menachem Begin as he stood explaining it on the White House lawn in Washington when he said, "We did it for our children." So what if, in the aftermath of traumatic events, one seeks not for full restitution for all parties, but for a negotiated settlement that allows the situation not to get out of hand any further? Years ago, when I was in a church leadership position, I was involved in two parties that did not agree with one another about an event that had taken place between them many years earlier. The so-called perpetrator denied the event. The victim demanded that just an official apology would solve the problem. I turned to the victim who demanded the apology, and I asked if a forced apology was indeed a relevant apology. Could it be counted as a true apology? We came to the conclusion that a verbal apology was not enough. A price had to be paid to make the apology look sincere and be seen as relevant. Sacrifice had to be made. Often in conflict management, especially when the conflict cannot be seen as resolvable, conflict management is the alternative. A price has to be paid by both parties to be acceptable. In the process of any form of transitional justice, one must realize that justice is not necessarily needed in the form of a quid pro quo, tit for tat, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, mending completely all injustice. That same professor who taught me about conflict management made it clear that one cannot solve a conflict on the same level on which it was created. An alternative way needs to be found, not by continuing the past behavior and coinciding animosity, but by looking at the situation from a different angle, one that is practical, one that transcends the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hans Knott, for the insightful discussion on the nature of transitional justice and conflict management and the long-lasting effects of authoritarian regimes. With your anthropological expertise and personal experiences, your work has shown us to look at conflict resolution from new angles.
And now we would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Eric Ahu, Chairperson of European Interreligious Forum for Religious Freedom. Let's welcome him.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here with you. I want to ask you, do you want me to do it in Chinese or English? You prefer English, I tell you. Okay, so. Transitional justice has many components. Under no circumstances, its purpose can be revenge. One example, after one of the most horrendous genocides of our recent history, Rwanda embarked on a journey towards healing and reconciliation. Around 1 million persons had been killed based on artificially created ethnic considerations. Neighbors had slaughtered and murdered their neighbors. Family members their family members. Children and women included, by hundreds of thousands. The trauma was far beyond what is usually easily faced or even conceived in our nowadays democracies. If you were a member of the Tutsi minority that had been wiped out, having witnessed family members being tortured, raped, and killed with no consideration of age, the willingness to get revenge could have been strong. Nevertheless, the Rwandese authority who took power after the end of the genocide chose a unique road leading to reconciliation. And this road was, of course, not tolerating revenge. That does not say that this policy has been implemented with perfection, but that was definitely the basis of the reconciliation process and the only way to prevent genocide from reproducing. So, if the road out of dictatorship and institutional violation of human rights excludes revenge, what should it include? Of course, it must be agreed on a purpose, and quite unanimously, it is agreed that what we call transitional justice is to be defined as the UN did as, and I quote the UN, the full range of processes and mechanisms associated with a society's attempt to come to terms with a legacy of large-scale past violations and abuses to ensure accountability, serve justice, and achieve reconciliation. Justice, reconciliation, and let's say healing. And it is aimed also at preventing the abuses to occur anew. But one component, one factor of transitional justice seems to me to be the most important of all, the one which underlay any other, truth. Dictators and tyrants are the source of a tremendous number of lies. They hide facts as they want to conceal their crimes. They twist other facts in order to justify their actions and wrongdoings. They destroy everything that could reveal the true nature of their acts. And they try to keep these lies in place forever, thinking that truth, once said to set you free, would kill them. But what is truth when we speak about transitional justice? Truth can be defined as the exact time, place, form, and event. It's actually a definition extracted from the Scientology axioms as written by L. Ron Hubbard. And there is a corollary. Lying is an alteration of time, place, event, or form. It is said that transitional justice process should be context-specific. What applies to Rwanda or to Argentina does not necessarily apply to Taiwan and vice versa. That is part of the truth-seeking process. Exact time, place, form, and event. Nevertheless, this context-specific feature should not serve as a pretext, nor to not apply what has worked somewhere else, or to avoid seeking for the full truth. Nothing can effectively be repaired without establishing the truth first. Every lie, big or little, stands in the way of reconciliation. Lies create persistence. When something does not resolve, it is because it contains a lie. Part of finding of the truth when it comes to transitional justice is establishing the time period that contains the fact that should be found and repaired. That is a very important part of the process, as if you leave out of the scope of transitional justice a period of time that in fact contain violations and infringements of human rights, you let lies in the field, which lie as landmines in an old battlefield, almost poetry. Countries which have undergone dictatorship have a long way to go to repair all damage caused by the perpetrators. It's not an easy task, and not one that can be saved upon. Just as lies can hinder the life of a person, they hinder the life of a country until the truth replaces them. That's why it's not only for the sake of the victims that the transitional justice process must be carried out, but for the good of the country itself. This is the only path to salvation. It is its only path to complete healing. It takes courage to seek and find the truth to its very details. It takes persistence. It takes the ability to confront facts, even if one would prefer them to be different. It also takes good reasoning and the ability to think straight. If one period of time was let out of the scope of the transitional justice, but one finds out that infringements of human rights happened in that period, whether it is before or after the elected period, one must confront the fact that this period should be included. The truth-seeking process may bring surprises and changes of opinion. After carefully examining the facts, one can find out that the previous examination was wrong or not precise enough. That is normal in the process of truth-seeking. And while I'm not here trying to go over all the aspects of transitional justice, let me add that the UN says that it must be participative and empowering. That means, and I quote, ensuring meaningful participation and consultation with victims and affected communities in designing and implementing transitional justice mechanisms, thereby contributing to a shift in victims and broader society's perceptions and understanding of their status and roles as beneficiaries of the process and as powerful agents of change in pursuit of transformation, peace, democracy, and reconciliation. So what does that say about Taiwan? Well, it says that Taiwan has done a tremendous job on the way of transitional justice, and that is evidenced by the incredible changes that took place these last 30 years. From one of the worst dictatorships to a vibrant democracy, where freedom of religion in particular and human rights in general are erected as pillars of society, sometimes even more than in some Western democracies. It also says that if there are still problems that persist, they must be addressed for the sake of all. And as far as freedom of religion is concerned, it appears after examination that the period after '92 has to be taken into account, whilst violations continue to be perpetrated against spiritual and religious movements. That must be confronted and must be solved in a participative and empowering way. That means with the participation of those who suffered the violations. They must be listened to. And by confronting the truth of what really happened, solutions should arise for the full repair of the wrongdoings. That is reason, that is justice, and that will help completing the full healing process that Taiwan has started years ago for the benefit of all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eric Rahu, for highlighting the vital role of truth in transitional justice. Like what you have mentioned, establishing the truth is an essential first step in any repair process, and that any unresolved issue contains an unaddressed lie, reminding us to remain vigilant and thorough during the repair process.
And now we would like to introduce our next speaker, Davide S. Amorde from Asylum Islamic Culture Association, SISR, Italian Society for the History of Religious. Let's welcome him.
Okay, thanks. Ni hao. First of all, may I thank you to have invited me again in order to witness once again the common efforts we are doing to, to share common thoughts and, to find common solutions. My paper, first of all, okay, let me introduce myself for those ones that maybe they don't know me. My paper, my name is David S. Suleiman. It's my second name, okay. And okay, I'm an historian of religion, and I'm a Muslim, and I'm the secretary of a local Islamic association. So, my PC decided to make the update just now. So it's shutting off. It's opening back again. So okay, my paper is about the transitional justice in Islam. Okay, and how the Islamic concept of transitional justice maybe can give a different window about you know, the solution of the case that everybody we are. So transitional justice is the set of mechanisms and processes for dealing with the past after a period of widespread or systematic violation. Okay, sorry that my PC is okay. Systematic violation of human rights, typically involving those responsible for these violations. It can include truth commissions, prosecutions, reparations, and institutional reform. Okay. Just give me a minute, I'm taking back my paper because my computer now. Why again? Okay. Yes. Okay. So, yes. So, transitional justice in Islam. Transitional justice in Islam refers to the principle and mechanism employed within Islamic jurisprudence, okay, to address human rights violations, atrocities, and other serious offenses during times of political social transition. The concept of transitional justice in Islam is rooted in the idea of seeking justice, reconciliation, and accountability while moving towards a more just and harmonious society. Key elements of transitional justice in Islam include restorative justice. Islamic principles emphasize the importance of forgiveness and reconciliation, encouraging offenders to sincerely repent and seek forgiveness is considered a crucial step in the process of healing and restoring relationships within society. Truth and accountability. Revealing the truth about past atrocities is essential for justice and healing. Islam encourages the disclosure of facts to understand the circumstances that led to the violations and to prevent their recurrence. Fair trials and due process. When dealing with individuals accused of serious crime, Islam upholds the principle of fair trials and due process, ensuring that defendants are treated justly, are aware of the charges against them, and could defend themselves. Compensation and restitution. Providing compensation to victims and restitution for their losses is a fundamental aspect of transitional justice in Islam. This helps victims rebuild their lives and fosters a sense of justice within the affected communities. Pardoning and mercy. While accountability is crucial, Islam also emphasizes the importance of mercy and pardoning, particularly in cases where offenders genuinely regret their actions and seek forgiveness. Community involvement. In Islamic tradition, the community plays a significant role in resolving disputes and addressing injustice. In times of transition, community leaders and religious scholars often participate in the reconciliation and restoration processes. Preventing retribution. Islamic teachings discourage revenge and encourage individuals to let go of personal vendettas. Instead, emphasis is placed on resolving conflicts through peaceful means and legal processes. Judicial independence. For transitional justice to be effective, the judiciary must remain independent and free from political influence to ensure impartiality and fairness in decision making. Islam, can go to the next slide. Islam has a long history of dealing with justice, and there are several Islamic principles that can be applied to transitional justice. These principles include retribution. The principle of retribution holds that those who commit crimes should be punished in order to deter others from committing similar crimes. This principle is reflected in Islamic law, which prescribes punishments for a variety of crimes. Reconciliation. The principle of reconciliation holds that it's important to bring together victims and perpetrators of violence in order to heal the wounds of the past. The principle is reflected in the Islamic concept of the sulh, which refers to a peace agreement between two parties. Reparation. The principle of reparations holds that victims of violence should be compensated for their losses. This principle is reflected in Islamic law, which allows for the payment of compensation to victims of crimes. Rehabilitation. The principle of rehabilitation holds that perpetrators of violence should be given the opportunity to reform their behavior. This principle is reflected in Islamic law, which allows for the possibility of pardon or clemency for those who have repented of their crimes. This principle can be used to create a framework for transition. Next slide, please. This is some thoughts from Ibn Khaldun, a very well-famous Muslim historian, thinkers and polymath, okay, and it's universally recognized as the father of the sociology. Ibn Khaldun on transitional justice. These are some thoughts just to have an idea what about Muslim savants said in the past about it. And I may link about who preceded me in this cathedra, especially what Hans Nolte said about the totalitarian regime that leads people to get anger. That was a principle well described by Ibn Khaldun too. That's why civilization usually falls, because at the end of a civilization, rulers used to act in an unjust manner, and people get angry till when they start a riot and end that civilization and build another one more fair, you know. And one of the first reasons, one of the first clues that makes a civilization turn to a totalitarian one is the increase of taxes or the imposition of unjust taxes. That's the first spy that, according to Ibn Khaldun, that makes a civilization turn from a fair one to totalitarian one. This principle can be used to create a framework for transitional justice in Muslim majority countries. Next slide, please. However, it is important to note that there is no single Islamic model of transitional justice. The specific mechanisms and processes that are used will vary depending on the specific circumstances of each country. Here are some examples of how Islamic principles have been applied to transitional justice in recent years. In the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide that were described by were described before me. In the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide, the government established the Gakaka courts, okay, which were based on traditional Rwandan methods of conflict resolution. The Gakaka courts helped to bring to justice some of those responsible for the genocide, and they also provided a forum for victims to tell their stories and seek justice. The other example, that in the aftermath of the Sierra Leone Civil War, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, was established. The The TRC was tasked with investigating the abuses that had occurred during the war, and it also provided a forum for victims to tell their stories. The TRC's report was an important step in the process of reconciliation in Sierra Leone. It is important to know that transitional justice in Islam can take various forms and may be influenced by cultural and regional practices. There is no specific codified system of transitional justice within Islam, as it is primarily based on the interpretation of religious texts and the application of Islamic principles to real-world situations. Overall, the concept of traditional justice in Islam embodies a holistic approach to address past wrongs, promote healing, and build a more equitable and harmonious society, or at least it tried to be. That said, can these principles also be adopted by experiences alien to Islamic one? It should not be forgotten that Islam aspires to be a universal religion on a par with Christianity and therefore directed to all men regardless of their creed. So the cases, many of the time the Quran started to say, Ya ayyuhan nas, means all mankind. Doesn't say all Muslims, doesn't say all Christians, say all mankind. Means address is words to all humanity. No? And so the cases in which, within the historical experiences of non-Islamic countries, as for example South Africa, India, notwithstanding the actual government, and historically speaking the Norman Kingdom of Sicily, Muslim religious exponents are called to confront the rest of civil society in search of solutions in this sense are not rare. And modestly, my presence in this noble assembly of people of knowledge is an example of this. Therefore, it is our belief that an alternative approach in the wake of the example treated up to now could be useful in accelerating the resolution of the Tajimen case, and that, consequently, also Muslims residing in this country could contribute to indicating, together with the DZ, a shared path of transitional justice for all Taiwanese people. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Davide Amore, for your comprehensive overview on transitional justice in the framework of Islam, and for the thought-provoking idea of utilizing these principles as a potential alternative solution for the Taijimen case, particularly in today's world. Efforts to build bridges between cultures and religions in the shared pursuit of justice and harmony are invaluable.
And finally, we would like to introduce our last speaker, Dr. Agaro CDK. I'll conclude. Okay, sorry. So, okay, now we would like to thank you for all of the panelists, all of the speakers again. Thank you. We cannot possibly achieve this monumental task alone. To our dear friends and all the dedicated professionals who have been actively advocating for human rights issues on a global scale, we love you all and thank you all so much. And lastly, we would like to invite the organizers of today's event to make conclusions. Let us welcome our organizer, chairman of Taiwan Association for Financial Criminal Law Study and initiator of Tax and Legal Reform League, Professor Chen Zhilong, to make his conclusion. Let's welcome him.
感谢大家从早上到这下午参与。那我们今天在这个重要的点，因为228是牵涉到人民的期待跟政府的能不能配合人民的期待，就是一个民主的要求的一个期待的地方。它一开始是一个艺术发展创意的地方，那后来也经过很多的冲突，所以228这个地点产生很多的变化。然后这里也牵涉到有一些这个专制极权，然后也牵涉到这些人民原本期待会更好，可是事实上呢，它的现实是很残酷的，现实是都是破坏，还有屠杀，还有加上长期的这个martial戒严。那这个文化，我们虽然可以说台湾有这么严重的戒严时期，那大家期待会透过一个叫做临近革命的 peaceful revolution， 会就是 still revolution， 但是会更好。可是事实上，这个临近革命呢，使得我们台湾还有很多问题没有解决。那很多的假案，很多的破坏案件，其实都没有解决。所以所谓转型正义呢，还有所谓的和解呢，我们根本不会要求要报复，但是连一个和谐的和解基本的需求都没有，所以这个东西是我们不需要在这种假的民主、假的人权，我们需要是真的人权，需要能够尊重我们每一个人的人权。如果没有一个人的人权被尊重，其他讲的都是假。所以这种假的民主国家，我们现在必须要彻底检讨。那我们也知道，欧洲还有很多的地方都历经过这个所谓的前勤政府，但是都会改变的。其实，所以真的只要大家互相关心、互相帮忙，民主是可以拿得到的。非常感谢各位到来的这些贵宾，感谢你们。我们也希望民主是大家互相来帮忙的，互相合作，缔造转型正义。谢谢。
Today, I'm very grateful to all of you for your participation from this morning to this afternoon. We are at this important place today because February 28th involves the people's expectations and the government's ability to match the people's expectations. And this is a place where democracy is expected to realize. And although Taiwan had such a serious period of martial law and thought we would be better off after the Quiet Revolution, still, there are many problems remain unsolved, and so we are not here asking for revenge, and we don't. But we don't have harmony and the basic needs, and so this is what we need to work together and achieve, and to pursue the democracy or the human rights that belongs to anyone around the world, and so. For the distinguished guests and everyone here who participated in these events. And so we hope to work together and to pursue human rights. Thank you. And next, we would like to invite our another organizer here, Chairman of Taiwan Association. Chairman of Citizen Congress Watch and Associate Professor of Department of Hakka Language and Social Sciences of College of Hakka Studies of National Central University, Professor Zheng Jianyuan. Welcome.
谢谢。 好，谢谢大家莅临今天的研讨会。啊，那我们现在所坐落的这个地点呢，台湾的国家228纪念馆，就是关于转型正义非常重要的历史的地标啊。那所以我们在这边讨论转型正义的问题啊，这个我们还可以跟台湾过去的历史啊，还有台湾的今后的民主的发展来做一个对话。那刚刚几位先进都提到啊，这个冲突啊需要管理啊，然后呢真相需要追求。台湾的转型正义的经验呢，比较令人遗憾的地方，就是在真相的追求上面，我们现在还有很大的问题啊。我本身啊就是来自恐怖啊这个译者的后代啊，那我父亲啊当年呢这个相关的这些政治档案资料啊，现在还是被列为国家的永久机密。我也在努力啊，那么参与这个相关的这个修法的倡议啊，也就是说把台湾非常特殊的这种国家机密啊永久这个保护的这种制度把它解决掉啊，因为呢只要这个迫害的历史呢被掩盖那么不仅正义无法实现，而且呢，未来有权利的人呢，都有可能滥用他的权利因为呢，只要有一个制度可以保护这个迫害的这个过程迫害的这个历史呢，永远不会被揭发的话，那么这个迫害呢，就在任何时期就有可能发生。这是我们台湾非常惨痛的一个经验现在我们仍然受这样苦难那么现在呢，这个在欧洲我们也知道俄乌战争我想即将会告一段落，转型正义的问题必须被纳入考虑。那在欧洲之外呢，亚洲两岸之间呢到这个战争的阴霾之下。我也相信我们管理这个管理呢没有办法依赖两岸之间来处理因为两岸的实力非常悬殊，所以在这个问题上面呢，我们非常期待来自于这个国外的专家学者那么和你们所代表的国家和民间的社会也来能够关心我们台湾跟中国之间的这个冲突希望说未来这个中国的民主化，中国的转型也能够在国际共同管理的状态之下能够和平的来透过宁静革命的方式能够来进行，这样就可以避免更大规模的这个甚至是杀戮或者是战争这个迫害。那我在和平的这个管理的过程当中，相信也能够让这个正义能够伸张让真相能够获得保存所以我想今天这个研讨会将会带给我们台湾或者是华人社会很多的启发那非常谢谢大家今天的谢谢。
So thank you for your attending of today's seminar. The place where we are now located is the National Memorial Hall of Taiwan on February 28, which is a very important landmark for restoring justice. And here we discuss the issue of restoring justice, and we hope that we can have a dialogue with Taiwan's past, history, and for the future development of democracy. And just now, just as a couple of experts mentioned about the transitional justice to be managed and to be pursued. According to our past experience, we still encounter difficulties in pursuing the truth. And, I personally is a family member. My family is one of the relevant political, is one of the victims of the white terror in Taiwan. And the information about the relevant political files is still classified as permanent state secret. And so I am still working hard and participating of this kind of issue. And so now in Europe and all around the world, we all know that Russia-Ukraine war will soon, we hope that it will soon come to an end. And this issue of transitional justice is necessary. And the conflict between the two sides of Taiwan and China also needs to be managed. On this issue, we also hope that foreign experts and scholars, as well as the countries around the world, can pay attention and help with this issue to resolve the conflict between us. And we hope that in the future we'll be able to avoid the conflict between the two countries and moreover the persecution of killing that the wars through a quiet revolution. And so at last, in the process of this, I believe that justice can be done and the truth can be preserved. And today's seminar will bring us and our community in Taiwan a lot of inspiration. Thank you all. Okay, and lastly, we would like to introduce our Dr. DK, President of Caribbean and Africa Faith-Based Leadership Conference and licensed to the White House Faith-Based Cabinet Offices. Let's welcome him to make the conclusion.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks to Dr. Hang, Fabienne, and to the organizers for allowing me to share on this special platform here in Taiwan. I am the only person here on this panel of African descent, and I do not take this for granted. I am indeed grateful. I'm indeed inspired by the tour of this museum and the amazing panel that just presented their perspective on human rights trends in transitional justice and authoritarian persecution. You came to us from different social, ethnic, religious, and national backgrounds with tremendous knowledge and expertise in religious freedom, human rights, democracy, and international law. You have provided very essential solutions and has helped us to understand the role of the United Nations, the European Union, and religious perspectives, including our last speaker who spoke on Islamic elements for transitional justice. As a Christian, spiritual practitioner, interfaith advocate, leader of the Caribbean and African Faith-Based Leadership Conference, and liaison to the White House Faith-Based Cabinet Offices, there is no doubt that I have a responsibility to mobilize and conscientize our religious and civic leaders to speak truth to power and implement ecclesiastical policies to create opportunities for transitional justice. As a United States citizen, it is important to highlight that the US government for many years have been a global leader in the fight for democracy, justice, human rights, and civilian security. Personally, in my capacity, I have facilitated numerous groups from Africa, India, and elsewhere, and victims of persecutions to engage the White House faith-based cabinet offices, the U.S. Department of State Office of Religious Freedom, the U.S. Department of State Office of Religious and Global Affairs, Homeland Security, and others for their support on these issues. Based on what I have learned today about human rights trend in transitional justice and authoritarian persecution, it is evident that evil and persecution have similar characteristics everywhere in the world. Police officers, soldiers, and government security forces, whose responsibility it is to protect civilians, and they are used everywhere as tools to persecute, harm, and kill innocent citizens who are advocating for their human rights. Human rights advocates everywhere are often oppressed, killed, and dehumanized for speaking out and protesting against injustice. It is sad to discover that our governments of our countries and bodies such as the United Nations Security Council seem to lack the political will to stop and alleviate political, civil, and religious killings and persecutions here in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and other places. It is unfortunate that while apartheid in South Africa and slavery in West Africa has been abolished, persecutions of all forms remain a modern-day challenge. It remains a reality here in Taiwan, in other parts of Asia, continental Africa, Europe, and elsewhere in the world. Our first speaker, Professor Chen, made it clear that it is not fair to call a massacre and genocide a mere 2028 incident. Where there is no independence of a judiciary system, the guarantee of justice will not be free of corruption and manipulations by government authorities. Transitional justice is still an ongoing reality here in Taiwan. Professor Wei highlights some of the major causes in Taiwan. There is still authoritarian persecution in Taiwan, which is evident in the tax laws and how taxes are being handled. It is very admirable that the people of Taiwan were able to build a museum here to share your history of persecution with future generations and people from other nations. Many nations around the world still lack the freedom and opportunity to publish and establish museums and institutions to tell their own story as you have done today. If we are going to be effective in persevering dignity, human rights, and achieving transitional justice, we must defend justice everywhere. We must defend justice by denouncing every act of evil, terror, manipulation, and inequality in every sector of our societies. This begins with correcting wrongdoings done in our home, wrongdoings done by our families, wrongdoings done in our schools, in our workplace, in our institutions, and communities at large. Attributes such as bullying, tribalism, imperialism, racism, and class discrimination must be alleviated from our societies. Today, as we listen to our panelists, many of them have highlighted several theories of justice that are very, very critical to the subject matter. I want to just highlight a few briefly, my own perspective. There are several theories of justice I believe apply to the subject of transitional justice. These include compensatory justice and charismatic distributive justice. Compensatory justice is the moral process of correcting past and present injury, dispositions, exploitation, and the violation of rights. It makes restitution offers reparations, seek to restore a person to wholeness, and grant them their rightful place or status in the community. Charismatic distributive justice requires a person to love themselves and share the same love with others, whose interests and welfare are to be regarded as one one's life. Charismatic distributive justice also demands respect for the rights of those whose dignity has been degraded. We should value the intrinsic worth of each human being, irrespective of appearance, race, or ethnic heritage. We should universally strive to eradicate impartial behaviors and work towards fairness, transparency, and justice for all. According to John Rawls, in his theory, Justice and Fairness, the only safe principle will be the fair principle. The safest principle will provide the highest minimum standard of justice in the projected society. The fair principle is the only safe principle, for no one knows who will suffer the benefit from the structure of any biased institutions. Karen Lebec, in her book, Justice in an Unjust World, strongly urges that injustice in our world must be taken seriously. Recognition and repentance of wrongs are critical to justice everywhere. I conclude by saying, our governments and civil society leaders here in Taiwan, China, the United States, Africa, the Caribbean, and everywhere in the world should therefore strive to do all in our power to prevent institutional injustice and to stop authoritarian persecution caused by our governments and the perpetrators of administrative terrorism within our society. Thank you very much for sharing this platform with me. God bless you.
我现在摘要一下刚刚讲的哈，I have to translate to Mandarin。今天很高兴有这个机会让我在这里。那我应该是这里唯一一个非洲后裔的人来讲今天这个主题。那其实他今天很用心，他说他早上看的那个博物馆后，他其实有很深的感受。然后下午听这么多位的演讲，那每个都对这个主题就是有很表达，从各个层面表达他们很多很重要的看法。那他提到就是说，他也呼应陈教授讲的，就这是国家暴力。其实我们不要客气的说，它就是一个谋杀，它就是一个 genocide 屠杀。其实他也同意这样的讲法。那他也呼应这个魏教授讲的，就是说这个侯宽仁的状况哈，其实还有包括他结合到这个现在的这个税制的恐怖哈，他其实都有把它放在心里头。他其实说因为他是一个基督徒，那他是传教人，他代表他是来自他的单位叫做加勒比海，以及这个信仰他有跟白宫的一个合作的关系。那他身为一个传教人，又身为一个美国人，其实他也要在这里很大声的呼吁，其实他跟着大家一起是对抗所有的人权暴力、宗教破坏、各种形式、各种的歧视，他其实都是力挺。他的工作也就一直在支持这个，所以他今天听大家对于那个转型正义，从这些学者从各个角度提出来的建议，他其实都全部都是把它涵盖在一起。然后他说，其实现在全世界虽然我们已经有很多都已经解决了，譬如说南非的种族歧视，还有大家听到几十年代的，虽然是这样，可是其实那个破坏还是在继续的。就像台湾，他今天经历到还是这么。transitional justice 中 转型正义，它其实还是不断的在进行式当中。那他也很认真的就是摘要所有刚才几位学者讲的那个 transitional justice。大家的如果没关系，我讲的不够完整，他有稿子，有英文的稿子。He had to prepare English speech, so if my translation is not complete, I can share his speech with you later on. 我也会把这个 speech 转成这个中文，然后让大家有完整的。但是我觉得他刚刚做了很大的。但是他结论讲的非常重要，就是说，因为我觉得他也是看到全世界其实各个不同地方都是跟台湾一样在受到这样的迫害。那他是说就是我们今天在看到说，我们把这个迫害弄成就是有一个博物馆228，所以可以把这个被迫害的记录把它流传下来。那他觉得说，全世界其实也可以学习这样的一个方式，就是那他觉得这个是很重要，把这个迫害历史记录下来。然后其实我们还是一直不断必须要结合所有全世界的人，好，然后一起来为这个受到迫害跟宗教信仰的这个一起不断的努力。好，那我简单摘要大家刚刚有听到他的心声跟很慷慨激昂的对话，的谈话。那我相信说，就是我很简短做个简短的结论。那他也希望大家都一起来为这个世界更好的努力，这样子。好，以上。
I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Dr. Agoram DK for his inspiring and insightful reflection on human rights, trans and transitional justice, and the authoritarian persecution. We appreciate your passion for defending justice and preserving human rights, your efforts to mobilize religious and civic leaders, as well as your dedication to advocating for those facing persecution and oppression. Your call to the action to create a fair and just society is an important reminder for us all. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise, and let us work together as one. And right now, as we conclude, let us all be invited to the front to take a group photo, please.
Please remain on your seat. First, we're going to make two group photos. One, please remain on your seat. 现在我们请现场的贵宾朋友先留在座位下，然后我们的摄影师会到前面进行大合照。Please remain on your seat.
And thank you for the interpreters. Thank you very much.
要先关掉这个投影机，这边以这个为中，义字在中间，正义的义，往后压，那个字往后，你们都往后，对，那个这个就是
MC. And we have. Okay, we have some special gestures today to. Yes. Okay, 那个后面的来宾，我们一起往前面好了，这样子画面比较好看。后面有一点远。好，那我们在 OK 吗？哦，那我们请后面区域的与会贵宾，我们先往前，然后麻烦帮我们站在最后一排，这样子你们美丽的脸庞才被记录下来，美丽帅气的脸庞。 然后有戴口罩的麻烦帮我们先暂时的拿掉。
然后你这个拉直。好，来。
Okay, so the first gesture is okay. Let's smile all together.
Okay. Wait a moment.
Let's say cheese together, okay? So on the count of 3.
Say cheese.
要提醒。好。On the count of 3, let's say cheese. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Got this camera. Okay, so the second gesture we want to make a one with cross. 我们手放在胸前 which represents to say no to injustice.
Say no to injustice.
这个是代表我们要向那个。
没关系，那个不用。
向不公义。我们要向不公正跟不公义的事情说不。好，那我们3、2、1 on 3 let's say no to injustice. No to injustice. 1, 2, 3. No to injustice. Okay, so the last one, let's make a gesture like this, which 还有。
So the next gesture is holding our right arm out as we project justice and spread our boundless energy together. So 3, 2, 1, and then we say energy, okay? 3, 2, 1, energy! And 3, 2, 1, we say justice. 3, 2, 1, justice! Okay. All right.
And one last one. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we do have a last one. So now we would like to invite all the singers.
He was joking.
No, it is true. 现在是要先邀请就是所有的那个国际贵宾到台上，然后我们再进行一张他们读这个。So we would like to invite all the scholars in front of the stage.
We want only the international scholars to be invited in the front as we take a group photo together. You invite everyone to stand and to step forward. Y'all can put your hand on it.
贴在那里还会断断续续的断。
往这边过来，布条往这边过来，
这个往后啊。
整个全部往后退。
Everyone take 3 steps back.
2步。
Two steps back.
Can you see all of us?
Yeah.
Okay.
依林呢，喊一下口令。
Okay, so the first one, let's just smile and say cheese together. 一起说 cheese. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
拍到你。
Sorry. We invite you to join them as well. Together. We can help you to take photos.
Here. 这边太高，低一点。低一点，对，随便低一点。OK。
Okay. I'll count to 3, and then we say cheese. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Okay. Now we will put our right arm out together, and we say justice as I count to 3.
老师，你们不用拉，然后你拉到这边来，好，然后你再往过去，然后你站进去，哎，对，哎。
Okay, I count to 3 and we say justice with our right arm out. Okay? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, justice!
拉紧一点，一点用力，哎，对。
All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. 有。
那个是。
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Why does not the Minister of Finance say the cancel the persecution of
要求国税局去不要就停止他们的那个对于我们税单上面的迫害，可是为什么
political will?
She can, but she cannot.
Why can she not?
他要尊重他们的内部的东西，因为他可以把责任推给那个行政法院，然后推给他们内部的见解，因为他们内部有2种见解，一种见解就是一定要按照法律，另外一种见解是这个闹这么大，应该要按照行政程序法117条要撤，但是这个财政部长太小，而且他是这里头出来，他不会做这种事。
一个是行政程序，另外一个是
不是，他现在太极门是有在台中是有5个 case， 5年的案件，但是他只有1/5把它做这种判决，4/5是已经 OK 的。
我先倒带回前面先反应，就是前面我想先知道，刚刚老师有提到，就是有2种，就是他们内部有2种方式，一个是行政，
一个见解像陈冲啊那些人啊，他们是 background 是法律的，他们认为都应该要撤掉。那另外一种背景是不是法律的，对，就是财税，有2种见解。
So there is actually 2 systems in the officials. One is the judicial system, and one is the administration system.
这个就财政部长
And so for the judicial system, they think that you should stop it. You should stop the persecution. But in the administrative system, they have a different perspective on this. They think that 他们认为
他们做的决定是 above over the law.
They have the power to make a decision above the law.
Is it constitutional? Is it legal?
So it is not constitutional law. It is under the constitutional law.
Yeah. So
the reality of the tax system.
Yeah, but the taxes are
they don't care about they don't care constitutional. They don't care. They find a reason, so they keep the reason. 在太极门案就是有一个行政法院的判决，它是违反这个回避原则，所以他是同一个人，所以他有这个高等法院的审跟最高法院是同一个人，所以我们在外面讲。
你要从这边上去，然后两只脚踩在这边，两保护我。
Yes.
鞋子脱掉啊！
我玩真吗？我就
穿西装，穿西装的。
我觉得我怕那个。
搞一下来，他太重了。
我觉得这个桌子不行啊。跟你讲，刚才那个谁，
红笔刚才也有上去。
红笔刚有上去过吗？
对。我觉得要小心有。
你怎么找一个那么漂亮的帮我那个建筑王酒店包住我？他这个偏高还有是他才可以，我真的不行。OK，
好，波雨欣，满波一下。
OK， 好，谢谢。
好，跟大家 say goodbye 啦，拜拜。拜拜。